Sometimes I lie awake at night wondering if I'm the bad guy in someone else's story. The space between right and wrong has never felt so blurry, so suffocating. My girlfriend thinks I betrayed her. My roommate believes I failed to protect him. And me? I'm torn between the two people I care about most, watching as everything I've built crumbles around me. I never expected to find myself caught between someone's trauma and someone else's anger. 7 months ago, when I first moved in with my roommate, everything seemed straightforward. We weren't best friends or anything, but we got along well. He was quiet, respectful, and kept to himself most of the time. Just two guys in their early 20s trying to navigate life independently. About 2 weeks after we moved in together, he sat me down for what I thought would be a conversation about chore schedules or bills. Instead, he shared something that would eventually become the focal point of the biggest conflict in my life. "There's something you should know about me," he said, his eyes fixed on the floor rather than meeting mine. "I'm not comfortable being alone with women I don't know well. It's just something I need you to understand if you're going to be living here." I was confused at first, maybe even a little judgmental. Was this some weird religious thing? Did he have some kind of phobia? But then he continued, and the weight of his words hit me like a truck. He didn't go into explicit details, but he explained enough for me to understand the gravity of his situation. From ages 8 to 12, his stepmother had done things to him, inappropriate things that no child should ever experience. I told him about my breakup, not to gain sympathy, but to acknowledge that I had finally recognized the fundamental problem with how the situation had been handled. "It wasn't just about her coming over when you weren't home," I explained. "It was about her complete unwillingness to consider that your boundaries were valid and important. And it was about my failure to stand firm on that point." He nodded thoughtfully. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry things didn't work out with your relationship." "I'm not," I admitted. "Not anymore. I'd rather be alone than with someone who can't respect other people's boundaries and trauma." We talked for over 2 hours, moving from the specific incident that had driven us apart to broader discussions about trust, respect, and the complicated nature of healing from trauma. He shared more about his experiences than he ever had before. Not in graphic detail, but enough for me to better understand the depth of what he had endured and the courage it had taken for him to trust me with his boundaries in the first place. By the end of our conversation, something had shifted between us. Not forgiveness exactly, that would take more time, but an understanding that went deeper than before. "My new place isn't great," he confessed, as we were preparing to leave. "One of my roommates is moving out next month. I was thinking of looking for someone to take his spot." I stared at him, hardly daring to hope that this was headed where it seemed to be. "Would you be interested?" he asked hesitantly. "I know it's weird after everything, but—" "Yes," I said, without hesitation. "If you're really comfortable with that, yes," he smiled. A small, cautious smile, but genuine nonetheless. "We need to establish some clear ground rules from the beginning. About visitors and boundaries and communication." "Absolutely," I agreed. "Whatever you need me to understand and respect, I will." As we parted ways that day, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The pain in his eyes as he briefly mentioned this told me everything I needed to know without requiring the horrific specifics. The guilt and regret weren't gone completely, but they were tempered now by the possibility of redemption, not through words or promises, but through consistent actions and genuine respect, moving forward. It's been 6 months since that conversation, and 4 months since I moved into my former roommate's new apartment. Our living arrangement is different this time. The boundaries are clearer, the expectations more explicitly stated. We've developed a system for communicating about visitors that respects his need for safety, while still allowing us both to have social lives. My ex-girlfriend reached out once, about 2 months after our breakup. She wanted to meet, to see if there was any chance of reconciliation. I declined. Some lessons are too important to unlearn, and the one she had inadvertently taught me, about the non-negotiable importance of respecting other people's boundaries, was perhaps the most valuable I had ever received. My roommate and I are closer now than we ever were before. Not best friends exactly, but there's a depth to our friendship that comes from having navigated a difficult situation together, and emerged with greater understanding on both sides. He's even started dating recently, cautiously, but with an openness that suggests healing is possible, even from the deepest wounds. As for me, I've learned to be more discerning about the people I allow into my life. I look for empathy, for a willingness to respect boundaries, even when they aren't fully understood. I'm more direct about my expectations and more willing to stand firm when those expectations are challenged. Sometimes I still wonder if things could have been different. And if that wasn't enough, he'd also experienced a false accusation from a former friend who claimed he'd made sexual advances when they were alone together. If I had been more assertive from the beginning, if I had better explained the importance of my roommate's boundaries to my ex-girlfriend, if I had immediately asked her to leave when she showed up uninvited and upset him in his own home. But I've come to accept that wondering doesn't change the past. All I can do is carry the lessons forward, about courage and vulnerability, about the responsibility we have toward those who trust us with their pain, and about the strength it takes to choose what's right over what's easy. Maybe someday I'll find someone who understands all this without needing to be taught. Someone who recognizes that respecting other people's boundaries isn't an inconvenience, but a fundamental aspect of being a decent human being. Until then, I'm content with the knowledge that I'm becoming the kind of person who deserves that sort of partner. Sometimes the most important relationships in our lives aren't romantic at all. Sometimes they're the quiet ones, the unexpected ones. The roommate who trusts you with his trauma, the friend who holds you accountable for your mistakes, the person who teaches you, through their own painful experience, how to be better. I failed my roommate once through weakness and indecision. I won't make that mistake again. Because in the end, the line between loyalty and love isn't a line at all. It's a circle encompassing all the people we care about, and all the ways we show that care through our actions, our choices, and our unwavering respect for their humanity. Sometimes doing the right thing costs us something precious. But doing the wrong thing costs us something even more valuable, our integrity. And that's a price I'm no longer willing to pay, no matter how high the emotional stakes may be. The accusation was eventually dropped, but the damage to his sense of safety had already been done. He didn't want to elaborate further, and I didn't push. Some wounds aren't meant to be exposed to just anyone, and I respected his right to privacy. All I needed to know was that my roommate had boundaries that stemmed from real trauma, and as someone sharing his living space, I had a responsibility to respect those boundaries. For months, this arrangement worked perfectly. I dated casually but never brought women back to our apartment unless I was present the entire time. My roommate seemed grateful for this small courtesy, though we never discussed it explicitly after that initial conversation. It was simply an unspoken agreement between us, a small sacrifice on my part to ensure his comfort and security in his own home. Then, 4 months ago, I met her. The woman who would become my girlfriend. She was everything I'd been looking for. Intelligent, passionate, and fearless in her convictions. Our connection was immediate and intense. For the first time in my life, I found myself falling deeply in love. Early in our relationship, I explained my living situation to her. I told her about my roommate's boundaries and asked if she could respect them by not coming over when I wasn't home. I didn't share the specific details of his trauma. Those weren't my stories to tell. But I emphasized that his boundaries came from a place of genuine pain and vulnerability. Of course, she said at the time. I completely understand, and for months she did. She was respectful, kind, and never pushed the issue. When she did come over, she and my roommate were cordial to each other. Not friends exactly, but civil in that way. People are when they share a common connection, but don't have much in common themselves. I thought I had successfully balanced both relationships, my romantic partnership and my roommate agreement. I never imagined I would eventually be forced to choose between them. Everything fell apart, started like any other. My brother had been in the hospital for a routine procedure, and I went to visit him with my parents. It was supposed to be a quick visit, a few hours at most before I returned home. While I was sitting in the waiting room, my phone rang. It was my girlfriend. "Hey, where are you?" she asked, her voice already tense in a way that suggested something was wrong. I explained that I was at the hospital with my family, but would be heading home soon. Good, she replied. I'm going to wait for you at your apartment. My parents are driving me crazy and I need to get out of the house. My stomach dropped. I don't think that's a good idea, I said carefully. Remember what I told you about my roommate? I'd rather you wait until I'm home. It's not a big deal, she insisted. I won't bother him. I'll just sit in your room and wait for you. Please, I urged, feeling anxiety building in my chest. Just wait for me somewhere else. I'll be done soon. But she had already made up her mind. I'm already on my way, she said before hanging up. I immediately texted my roommate to warn him, but he didn't respond. I tried calling him several times, but each call went straight to voicemail. With growing dread, I told my parents I needed to leave early and rushed back home. 20 minutes later, my girlfriend called again. Her voice was shaking with anger. Your roommate won't let me in, she fumed. I've been standing outside for 15 minutes, and he refuses to open the door. He said he's not comfortable having me in the apartment without you here. What the hell is his problem? I tried to calm her down, explaining that I was on my way and would be there in less than 10 minutes. But her anger only seemed to grow with each passing moment. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, I could feel the tension waiting for me like a physical presence. When I approached our apartment door, my roommate finally opened it. His face was pale, his body language stiff with discomfort. He didn't say anything, just nodded at me and retreated to his room. I barely had time to thank him before my girlfriend stormed past me into the apartment. What the actual fuck? She shouted once we were inside. Your roommate is a complete asshole. I was standing out there for almost half an hour. I tried to explain, to remind her about his boundaries and why they existed, but she wasn't having any of it. This is bullshit, she continued, her voice rising with each word. I shouldn't need your permission to come to my boyfriend's apartment. And your roommate doesn't get to decide who can and can't be here. This is your place too. My roommate must have heard her yelling because he emerged from his room with his keys and wallet in hand. His eyes met mine briefly, a look of hurt and betrayal that pierced through me, before he walked out the door without saying a word. After he left, I tried again to explain the situation to my girlfriend. I told her that while I understood her frustration, she needed to respect that this was my roommate's home too, and he had every right to feel safe and comfortable there. You don't understand what he's been through, I said, careful not to reveal details that weren't mine to share. Oh, please, she scoffed. He's using whatever happened to him as an excuse to hate women. And you're enabling him. Her words felt like a slap. That's not fair, I objected. He doesn't hate women. He has trauma related to specific situations. And I specifically asked you not to come over when I wasn't home. This only seemed to fuel her anger. So now you're taking his side? I'm your girlfriend. You should be defending me, not him. This isn't about sides, I insisted. It's about respect and boundaries. I asked you to respect a boundary, and you deliberately ignored it. A boundary? She repeated incredulously. It's not a boundary, it's control. He's controlling who can be in the apartment, and when, and you're letting him. And now you're trying to control me too. The argument continued for hours. She called my roommate a misogynist, claimed his trauma was probably exaggerated, and insisted that I was being manipulated. When I stood my ground, she accused me of not truly caring about her. By the time she finally left, it was past midnight, and I was emotionally exhausted. My roommate didn't return until the following morning. When he did, he barely looked at me. I think we need to talk about what happened yesterday, I said tentatively. He shook his head. There's nothing to talk about. You know my boundaries, and you let someone violate them anyway. I tried to stop her. I protested. I told her not to come, but you didn't tell her why, he pointed out. You didn't explain that it wasn't just some preference or quirk. And when she showed up anyway and disrespected me in my own home, you didn't ask her to leave. He was right, and that realization hit me hard. In trying to protect his privacy and my relationship, I had failed to truly protect him. The following weeks were a nightmare of strained silences and passive-aggressive exchanges. My girlfriend refused to apologize, insisting that she had done nothing wrong. My roommate retreated further into himself, spending as little time in the apartment as possible. And I was caught in the middle, trying desperately to repair both relationships while watching them crumble before my eyes. My girlfriend and I fought constantly. What had started as a disagreement about one specific incident quickly evolved into questions about our compatibility and values. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't simply take her side, and I couldn't understand why she wouldn't respect a boundary that was so important to someone I lived with, someone who had experienced significant trauma. "If you really loved me," she would say during our fights, "you would prioritize my comfort over his." But that's not how I saw it. To me, this wasn't about prioritizing one person over another. It was about maintaining basic respect and decency towards someone who had been vulnerable enough to share his boundaries with me. My roommate, meanwhile, began looking for a new place to live. He didn't say it explicitly, but I knew. I would come home to find him browsing apartment listings, closing the tabs quickly when he noticed me looking. He spent more time away from home, presumably meeting with potential new roommates or viewing available units. The guilt was overwhelming. I had created this situation, or at least I had failed to prevent it. I had tried to maintain a delicate balance and ended up destabilizing everything instead. 2 weeks after the incident, my girlfriend gave me an ultimatum. Either I find a new living arrangement where she would be welcome anytime, or we were through. "I can't be with someone who doesn't put me first," she declared. "And I refuse to be treated like a threat in your home. It's him or me." I was stunned by the finality of her statement. Was she really asking me to choose between my relationship with her and my responsibility toward my roommate? "Can't you understand that this isn't about you?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "This is about respecting someone's trauma-related boundaries. If it were any other kind of boundary, religious, cultural, personal, would you still be this dismissive?" But she wouldn't budge. In her mind, my roommate's boundaries were unreasonable, and my defense of them was a betrayal of our relationship. That night, as I lay awake contemplating the impossible choice before me, I heard my roommate come home late. Through the thin walls of our apartment, I could hear him packing, not just an overnight bag, but the systematic emptying of drawers and closets. He was leaving, and I was the reason why. I got out of bed and knocked on his door. After a long pause, he opened it. Behind him, I could see several boxes already filled with his belongings. "You don't have to leave," I said quietly. He sighed. "Yes, I do. This isn't working anymore. I'm sorry about what happened. I should have done more to prevent it." "It's not just about that," he replied. "It's about the fact that you didn't understand the gravity of the situation. You tried to explain my trauma to someone else, simplified it into something palatable for her to hear, when it's not simple at all. And when she disrespected me in my own home, you tried to make peace instead of standing firm." His words cut deep because they were true. In trying to navigate the situation diplomatically, I had minimized his experiences and compromised his sense of safety. "Where will you go?" I asked. "My cousin has a spare room. I can stay there until I find something permanent." I wanted to object, to promise that things would be different, but I knew they wouldn't be. My girlfriend would never understand or respect his boundaries, and as long as she was in my life, he would never feel truly safe in his own home. "I'm sorry," I said again, knowing how inadequate those words were. He nodded once, then closed the door. The next morning he was gone, leaving behind only a note with his forwarding address for mail and his share of the rent for the next month. With my roommate gone, I thought things would improve with my girlfriend. She could come over whenever she wanted now. There were no more boundaries to navigate, no more complex situations to explain. But instead of bringing us closer, his absence created a rift I hadn't anticipated. Every time she came over, I was reminded of why the apartment was now mine alone. Every moment of freedom she enjoyed in the space felt tainted by the cost at which it had come. And though I never said it aloud, I think she could sense my resentment. Our fights continued, but the subject had changed. Now we argued about my inability to let go of the past and her lack of empathy for someone who was clearly suffering. Each argument left us more distant than the last, until we were practically strangers sharing occasional moments of intimacy between long stretches of tension. 3 weeks after my roommate moved out, I ran into him at a coffee shop near campus. He looked different, not necessarily better or worse, just different. There was a guardedness to him that hadn't been there before, at least not with me. "How are you?" I asked, the question feeling simultaneously too big and too small for the situation. "I'm managing," he replied. "Found a new place with 2 other guys. They're nice enough." I nodded, unsure what else to say. "And do they know about my boundaries?" He gave a humorless laugh. "Yeah, I made that clear from the beginning this time. Figured it was better to scare people off early than deal with complications later." The implications stung, but I deserved it. I had been the complication in his life, or rather, my failure to properly enforce the boundaries he'd trusted me with had been. "I really am sorry," I said. "I should have done better." He studied me for a moment before responding. "You know what the hardest part was? It wasn't that your girlfriend showed up uninvited or that she yelled at me. It was that you tried to explain my trauma to her. Trauma you don't even fully understand, instead of simply saying, no, these are the house rules. You made my private pain a public discussion topic, something to be debated and judged by someone who had no right to an opinion on it." His words hit me with the force of absolute truth. In trying to mediate between 2 people I cared about, I had violated the trust of one and enabled the entitlement of the other. "You're right," I admitted. "I was trying so hard to keep everyone happy that I didn't stand firm on what was right." He nodded, seeming satisfied with this acknowledgement. "Well, I hope things work out with your girlfriend at least." The mention of her brought an unexpected clarity. In that moment, standing in a crowded coffee shop with the person whose home I had helped destroy, I realized that things would never work out with her. Not because she had done something unforgivable, but because our values were fundamentally misaligned in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. When I got home that evening, I called her and asked if we could talk. She came over, probably expecting another attempt at reconciliation. Instead, I ended our relationship. "I can't be with someone who doesn't respect other people's boundaries," I explained. "What happened with my roommate showed me that we have very different views on empathy and consideration for others' experiences." Her reaction was a mix of shock and anger. "Are you serious? You're breaking up with me because I wanted to be able to visit my boyfriend's apartment?" "That's insane." "No," I corrected gently. "I'm breaking up with you because when faced with someone else's trauma-based boundary, your response was to dismiss it, violate it, and then demand that I choose between respecting it and loving you. That's not the kind of relationship I want." She left in tears, calling me various unflattering names and promising I would regret this decision. Perhaps I would, but in that moment, I felt only relief and an overwhelming sense of having failed everyone involved, including myself. For weeks after the breakup, I existed in a strange limbo. The apartment felt too big, too empty, without my roommate's presence. My ex-girlfriend had blocked me on all social media and told our mutual friends that I had chosen my weird, woman-hating roommate over her. Some believed her, others reached out to hear my side of the story. I didn't have the energy to correct the narrative for most of them. I focused instead on what I had learned from the whole ordeal. About boundaries and respect. About the responsibilities we have toward the people we invite into our lives. About the courage it takes to be vulnerable with someone and the devastating breach of trust that comes when that vulnerability is not honored. 1 month after our chance meeting at the coffee shop, I texted my former roommate. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I wrote. "About what happened, about my role in it, about the ways I failed to be a good roommate and friend to you. I'm truly sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I wanted you to know that I understand now why what I did was wrong." I didn't expect a response, But to my surprise, he replied the same day, "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot." Encouraged by his response, I took a chance. "Would you be open to meeting for coffee sometime? No pressure, just to talk." After what felt like an eternity, he agreed. When we met the following weekend, the initial awkwardness quickly gave way to a surprisingly honest conversation.